Across Australia's major cities, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, massive church buildings now rise prominently beside highways and sprawling suburbs. Thousands gather every single weekend in these venues, not for quiet contemplation but for vibrant, high-production services. Professional bands and worship teams fill stadium-sized halls with contemporary music, while sermons are streamed worldwide, reaching audiences far beyond the physical walls. This isn't merely a shift in how Australians practice religion, it represents a profound cultural and theological transformation. We are compelled to ask, how did mega churches become such an influential and visible force in modern Australian Christianity, and what does their rise reveal about faith in the 21st century? For much of Australia's history, churches were small, local, and deeply community-centered institutions. Congregations were intimate, pastors knew families personally, and services were traditional, rooted in denominational practices spanning generations. This model fostered a sense of belonging through familiarity and shared heritage. However, starting in the late 20th century, particularly accelerating in the 1980s and 90s, a dramatic shift occurred. Individual churches began growing rapidly, not by adding hundreds, but by attracting thousands. Some congregations exploded from a few dozen to several thousand members in just a few years, fundamentally altering the landscape of Australian Christianity. This marked the beginning of Australia's mega-church era, a period of unprecedented growth and innovation that challenged traditional religious structures. Researchers and sociologists typically define a megachurch as a congregation with a weekly attendance exceeding 2,000 people, though some thresholds vary. In Australia, these churches almost invariably feature several distinctive characteristics that set them apart from traditional denominations. They boast large worship venues, often resembling concert halls or conference centers, designed for immersive experiences. These spaces host contemporary music with full bands and professional sound systems, creating an atmosphere akin to a live performance. Strong, charismatic leadership personalities often emerge, becoming nationally and even internationally recognized figures. Furthermore, extensive global media outreach through online streaming, podcasts, and social media presence amplifies their reach exponentially. But the critical question for both theologians and social scientists remains: why did this particular model of church succeed so dramatically in Australia, especially when many traditional denominations faced decline? The rise of megachurches in Australia coincided almost perfectly with several major social and demographic shifts transforming the nation. Rapid urban growth concentrated more Australians in major cities, creating large, diverse populations in specific areas. Immigration from non-European countries further diversified Australia culturally and religiously, introducing new spiritual perspectives. Simultaneously, traditional denominational church attendance was declining steadily, leaving many individuals seeking spiritual community feeling unfulfilled by existing options. Into this changing landscape, megachurches offered something genuinely different: a modern, accessible, and culturally relevant expression of Christianity. This model often shed the perceived baggage of tradition or formality, appealing to a generation seeking authenticity and contemporary relevance. This compels us to ask, did these churches grow primarily because Christian faith itself was evolving in how Australians understood it, adapting to new spiritual needs? Or did they grow because Australian society was changing, and mega churches simply adapted better to that shifting cultural milieu than traditional churches did? These are distinct explanations with profound implications for understanding the true meaning and impact of megachurch growth. Music, professional lighting, and compelling storytelling became absolutely central to the mega-church worship experience. Services were meticulously designed to feel welcoming and accessible rather than formal or intimidating, prioritizing engagement over ritual. Psalm 96:1, "Sing to the Lord a new song," was often interpreted as a divine mandate to innovate with contemporary musical styles and production values. The production quality often rivaled professional concerts, creating an emotionally resonant environment. Live-streamed sermons meant anyone, anywhere could participate, fostering a sense of global community. Global conferences organized by Australian megachurches drew thousands of attendees from around the world, amplifying their influence far beyond Australia's borders and establishing them as significant players on the international Christian stage. However, this emphasis on experience raises important theological and sociological questions. Does this approach genuinely deepen people's faith by making it emotionally engaging and personally meaningful, fostering genuine spiritual transformation? Or does it fundamentally redefine how faith is experienced, potentially prioritizing entertainment and emotional response over theological depth, critical reflection, and sustained spiritual discipline? Creating powerful experiences and fostering genuine spiritual transformation are not necessarily the same thing, even if they can appear similar on the surface. Australian megachurches typically revolve around strong, gifted leadership teams rather than traditional denominational structures. They often operate with corporate-style organizational systems, employing strategic planning, clear vision statements, measurable goals, and professional staff in specialized roles. This business-like approach allowed for rapid, intentional growth and efficient operations at scale, mirroring successful secular organizations. Many mega-church leaders meticulously studied successful churches globally, deliberately replicating and adapting strategies that proved effective. This professionalization of church management enabled global expansion and influence in ways that traditional congregational models, often constrained by hierarchical structures and slower decision-making, simply couldn't match. It represents a significant departure from historical models of church governance. Yet, this organizational structure raises a genuinely difficult question for both practitioners and researchers. Can spiritual leadership and pastoral care effectively scale up to serve thousands of people without losing the personal connection and individual attention historically central to Christian ministry? When a pastor cannot possibly know all their congregation members personally, does something essential get lost in the spiritual formation process? Or do megachurches find new, effective ways to create community through robust small group ministries and specialized teams that actually work better at scale, fostering intimacy within a large framework? Australian megachurches gained remarkable international reach that far exceeded their actual membership numbers. Churches like Hillsong became globally recognized brands, their worship music topping Christian charts worldwide and sung in churches across dozens of countries every Sunday. Their sermons reached millions online, shaping theological discourse and worship practices globally. Their conferences attracted international attendees and profoundly influenced church leaders worldwide, including significantly in the United States, a nation historically accustomed to exporting rather than importing church models. Mark 16:15, where Jesus says, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel," provided a powerful biblical justification for this global ambition, reframing evangelism for the digital age. So we must ask, is this global reach essentially a modern form of missionary work, spreading the gospel and Christian influence worldwide through digital media and cultural products, rather than solely through traditional missionaries? Or does it represent something entirely new? A chapter in global Christianity where influence flows in multiple directions and churches become international brands operating with a different set of dynamics than historical missionary movements. The implications for global Christianity are profound and warrant careful study. Mega churches have faced significant criticism from various quarters, prompting important theological and sociological debates. Some critics question whether sheer size inevitably compromises spiritual depth, arguing that maintaining theological substance becomes challenging when trying to appeal to thousands of diverse people. Others raise concerns about accountability and community care, asking how a church with thousands of members ensures everyone receives adequate pastoral attention, and that leaders remain transparent and accountable. Concerns also frequently arise regarding the celebrity status of mega-church pastors and whether this phenomenon corrupts spiritual leadership, potentially prioritizing charisma over character. Financial transparency and the allocation of vast resources are also frequent points of scrutiny. Conversely, supporters argue that megachurches effectively meet people where they are in the 21st century, in a digital, fast-paced, media-saturated world where traditional church models feel irrelevant to many Australians. They point to countless lives changed, extensive community service initiatives, and a global influence for good. This leads us to a fundamental question. Is numerical growth a legitimate, primary measure of spiritual success and God's blessing? Or is it just one part of a much more complicated story, where size tells us little about depth, faithfulness, theological integrity, or long-term spiritual impact? This tension lies at the heart of the mega-church debate. Let me leave you with some challenging questions to ponder, questions that resonate deeply with both religious scholars and social researchers. Do mega-churches represent genuine spiritual renewal, an authentic revival drawing people to faith who might otherwise never engage with Christianity? Or do they represent a profound reinvention, transforming Christianity into something that fits contemporary culture so well that it might have inadvertently lost essential, distinctive elements in the process? Can large-scale faith, practiced in venues with thousands of people, remain deeply personal and spiritually formative for individuals? Or does scale inevitably create a distance, a sense of anonymity that hinders intimate spiritual growth? And ultimately, what does the rise of megachurches reveal about modern spirituality in Australia? What Australians are truly looking for, what they might be running from, and what they genuinely value in religious community and spiritual expression today? The rise of megachurches in Australia reflects a broader global question facing Christianity everywhere. How does faith adapt to contemporary culture without losing its essential foundation, its ancient truths, and its distinctive identity? How do ancient traditions meet modern cultural expectations and needs, navigating the tension between relevance and fidelity? The answers to these complex questions are still unfolding in real time as megachurches continue to evolve and face new challenges in a rapidly changing world. Understanding this phenomenon honestly helps us think more clearly and critically about the intricate interplay of faith, culture, and community in our modern age. This is the Scholar's Ledger, where history, faith, and power are revealed. If you found this exploration thought-provoking, please subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analyses. Share your insights and questions in the comments below. Your perspective enriches our collective search for truth. Join us as we continue to unravel the complex narratives shaping our world.